It's just inconvenient for us. We didn't ask for this. The words hung in the air, thick and cloying, like the scent of overripe fruit. I looked at my mother, her face a mask of polite concern that didn't quite reach her eyes, and my older brother, Mark, who just shifted his weight, avoiding my gaze. The comfortable, familiar living room of my childhood home felt suddenly alien, the floral wallpaper mocking me with its cheerful obliviousness. Inconvenient? I echoed, my voice a little too sharp. I'd been planning this move for over a year. I found a job, secured an apartment, packed my entire life into boxes. Yes, we know, dear, Mom said, her voice smoothing over my outburst like a practiced hand. But you know how much this wedding means to Mark. And to us. It's always been set for this date. This was the norm. This was the subtle, constant current that had always pulled me back, no matter how far I tried to swim away. My life, my aspirations, my meticulously laid plans, they were always secondary, always subject to the unspoken needs of this family. My decision to relocate across the country, a move that represented a significant career leap and a chance to finally build a life on my own terms, had been met with a deafening silence. No congratulations, no offers of help, just nothing. They had treated it as a temporary whim, something I'd eventually grow out of. And now, with my brother's wedding looming, they were finally acknowledging it, not as a monumental life change for me, but as a personal slight. I remembered the phone call when I'd told them about the job offer. I'd been buzzing with excitement, my voice a little breathless as I shared the details. Mom's response? "Oh, that's nice, honey. Have you thought about who's going to help you pack?" Her tone was flat, devoid of any genuine interest, already pivoting to the practicalities that would inconvenience. Mark, ever the appeaser, had chimed in, "Yeah, you'll need a lot of boxes, won't you?" It was a deflection, a way to avoid engaging with my actual achievement. Then there was the time I'd gotten a promotion at my old job. I'd bought a small, celebratory cake. When I offered them each a slice, my father, bless his absent heart, had waved it away. "No, thanks." Watching my figure, he'd said, his eyes already glued to the sports channel. My accomplishments were like ghosts in their house, never quite solid enough to warrant more than a fleeting glance. They lived in a curated reality where their own dramas and routines were the sun around which everything else orbited. My desires were peripheral, easily dismissed. This time, however, felt different. This time, their dismissal was a deliberate act of erasure. I had invested so much, not just financially, but emotionally, in this new beginning. I had envisioned a clean break, a fresh start where my life wasn't constantly being reshaped by their expectations or, more accurately, their lack of them. The conversation in the living room continued, a polite dance of implied blame. Mom talked about how difficult it would be to find someone to help with the last-minute wedding preparations if I wasn't there. Mark, sensing an opening, added, "It would really help us out if you could just postpone the move for a few months. Just until after the wedding." Postpone the move? The word struck me like a physical blow. Postpone the job I'd worked so hard to get? Postpone the apartment I'd signed a lease on? Postpone the meticulously planned unpacking and settling into my new life? The sheer audacity of their request, the presumption that my entire existence was fluid and controllable by their convenience, was staggering. I looked at Mark, his brow furrowed in a show of concern that felt entirely performative. He knew I couldn't postpone. He knew the ripple effect it would have. But it was easier for him to ask, to put the burden on me, than to face the minor inconvenience of him and his fiancée doing some of the legwork themselves, or, heaven forbid, asking their friends for help. "I can't postpone the move," I said, my voice low and even. The anger was there, a cold knot in my stomach, but I knew better than to let it erupt. Yelling had never worked. It only solidified their belief that I was being dramatic or emotional. Mom sighed, a theatrical sound. "Well, we're just going to have to figure something out, aren't we?" The implication was clear, I was the problem, and I needed to fix it. "Actually," I began, my gaze steady, meeting both their eyes this time, "I think I figured something out." The silence that followed was electric. It wasn't the comfortable silence of understanding, but the tense silence of anticipation. They expected me to capitulate, to offer a compromise, to eventually bend to their will. "I've made arrangements," I continued, my voice still calm, each word chosen with deliberate precision. "My flight is booked for Thursday. I'll be arriving in my new city on Friday evening. I've already arranged for movers to deliver my furniture on Saturday morning. My new job starts on Monday." Mark's jaw tightened. "But the wedding is Saturday. You can't be in two places at once." "No, I can't," I agreed, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. "Which is why I won't be there. I won't be able to make it to the wedding." The color drained from Mom's face. Her practiced composure faltered, revealing a flicker of panic. You're not coming? But we're counting on you. Who's going to help Aunt Carol with the seating chart? Who's going to help your grandmother get to the ceremony?" "I'm sorry," I said, the apology devoid of any real regret. "As I said, I've made arrangements. I've already emailed Aunt Carol and Grandma with all the details. They're being very understanding." Mark scoffed. "Understandable? They'll be furious. You're abandoning us, your own family, on such an important occasion." Abandoning them. The accusation, so rich in hypocrisy, almost made me laugh. They had abandoned me, not with a dramatic gesture, but with a quiet, persistent neglect, a steady drip of indifference that had eroded my sense of belonging for years. "Mark," I said, leaning forward slightly, my gaze unwavering, "you asked me to postpone my move. You asked me to derail my career, to leave my new job, to dismantle my new life, all for the convenience of your wedding. You didn't ask me if this move was important to me. You didn't ask me how I felt about leaving. You simply assumed I would prioritize your needs, as always." I let that sink in. The air in the room grew heavy with unspoken accusations and simmering resentment. They had been so accustomed to my compliance, to my quiet sacrifice, that the notion of me asserting my own needs, of me drawing a boundary, was an affront. "I'm not abandoning anyone," I stated, my voice firm. "I am simply living my life. And my life, unfortunately for you, no longer revolves around the unspoken expectations of this family. I've sent you all an invitation to my new life. It's up to you whether you choose to accept it or not." I stood up, the rustle of my clothes sounding unnaturally loud in the charged silence. "My movers arrive on Saturday morning. I have a very busy weekend ahead of me. I'll call you both when I'm settled." I walked out of the living room, leaving them standing there, stunned and speechless. The front door clicked shut behind me, a definitive, clean sound. The aftermath was precisely as I'd imagined, and yet, even more satisfying in its predictable chaos. The text messages started almost immediately. My mother's were a torrent of guilt-tripping and thinly veiled threats. "Your grandmother is inconsolable. She says she won't go if you're not there to escort her. This is your fault." Mark's messages were more direct, a mixture of anger and desperation. "You're really going through with this? You're ruining everything. People are talking. They think you're selfish." Then came the flying monkeys. My Aunt Carol, always eager to mediate family disputes, called with a carefully worded plea. "Honey, I know you're excited about your new life, but this wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Can't you just be there for a few days? For your mother? She's truly devastated." Her voice dripped with false sympathy. I listened patiently, thanked her for her concern, and reiterated my plans. She hung up sounding slightly bewildered, as if my refusal to be manipulated was a foreign concept. My younger cousin, who idolized me, sent a tentative text, "Hey, are you really not coming?" "Everyone's saying," I replied with a simple heart emoji, a silent acknowledgement of her loyalty and a gentle redirection. The real fallout, however, was for Mark and my mother. The wedding proceeded, a slightly less cohesive affair than they had envisioned. Aunt Carol, without my help, struggled with the seating chart, leading to several awkward table assignments. Grandma, though initially upset, managed to attend, albeit with a less enthusiastic escort. The talk around town, the whispers I had been so anxious to avoid, wasn't about my selfishness, but about the apparent rift within the family, the visible cracks in their carefully constructed facade of unity. Mark's immediate social circle, always more attuned to status and appearances, quickly picked up on the subtle snub. Invitations to his events became less frequent. My mother, accustomed to her prominent role in the local social scene, found herself facing cooler greetings and hushed conversations. The inconvenience they had tried to impose on me had, in fact, become their own. I was busy. My new job was challenging and fulfilling. My apartment, though still filled with unpacked boxes, felt like mine. I went to work, met new colleagues, explored my new city. My phone remained on silent for most of the day. When I did check it, the messages from home were sparse, tinged with a desperate attempt to regain control, to reass RT their dominance. When are you coming to visit? We miss you. Your father's birthday is next month, you'll be here for that, won't you? I read them, acknowledged them with a polite, non-committal response when necessary, and then returned to my life. There was no grand declaration, no public denouncement. The emotional justice wasn't delivered with a shouted accusation, but with the quiet, unwavering execution of my own plans. They had dismissed my move, treating it as an inconvenience to be smoothed over, a minor blip in their carefully orchestrated lives. They had assumed I would always yield. They underestimated the quiet strength of someone who had spent years enduring their subtle dismissals, their casual disregard. They underestimated the power of a carefully constructed plan, of a life built not on their approval, but on my own solid ground. Their social standing, their ego, their need to control, these were the things that had been truly rattled. As I sat on my new balcony, the city lights twinkling below, I felt a profound sense of peace. It wasn't the triumphant roar of victory, but the quiet hum of a storm that had passed, leaving behind a landscape irrevocably altered. They had ignored my departure, but they would never forget it. And I, in turn, would never again allow myself to be ignored. The silence they had met my dreams with, I had finally returned with my own. It was a cold, clean, and perfectly earned quiet.